turnout that's somewhat improved over past years, thank you. First, I'd like to say I've been told by folks in the audience that my voice sometimes is too low to be heard in the back of the room. So I'll try to speak a little louder, but hopefully not to the point where my kids say that I'm yelling. So hopefully, again, the low tone and the loudness make it to the back of the room. Again, thank you for joining us. I know that some are here due to the increased transparency of the budget process that has evolved over the past 2 years. I know that some are here through a desire to see an increased funding for education and handle. Some are also here to see a desire to reduce the burden on the taxpayer. And some of you are here due to a video blog encouraging you to do so. I finally had time to review one of the blogs last evening and found repeated use of the words, "I don't know," and "you decide." I hope after tonight's review of the budget, you feel you do know more and you are in a position to decide. Hopefully, at the June 8th district-wide referendum, and then again at the June 13th vote by each town in the district. Your support is critical, regardless of the perspective you bring. So whatever your reason for being here, I hope that the increased transparency this year has provided has given you a much better picture of how the budget is developed. Tonight we're going to cover the highlighted changes and then open it up to Q&A. Respectful of the fact that many of those on the school board have taken a considerable amount of time in the various committees, including finance, budget, policy, doing what we were sent here by voters to do, looking out for the best interest of our kids and the students who attend our schools, and to make sure that we have a working environment for all employees that is enriching, supportive, and respectful. So regardless of which perspective you support tonight, for higher or lower spending for schools, please be respectful of others while we present the draft budget approved at the last board meeting, and take time to answer your questions in an orderly fashion. As with all board meetings, we have a sign-up sheet up here on the desk, so you need to check in so we have a determination of the amount of time we can allocate in an orderly fashion, and we'll try to get to all your questions. So there's, the first piece of info, we have sort of a summary sheet.
And it goes along with and they're both up at the
I think I printed a large version of this. So we have a 2-page summary sheet that goes through the different articles. And for those in the audience, an article is basically a bucket or a category within the spending that is required by the state of Maine. It's basically prescribed category of where money gets spent at the schools. In fact, it was sent out within the link 22. There's a couple copies here on the desk. Folks need those. So first we have, and what we'll do is kind of run down through each of those articles or categories, and then maybe provide a little bit of a drill down of detail on that, and then open up to question and answer. I'd also like to acknowledge some correspondence we received from members of the public since the last meeting. So for Article 1, which includes regular instruction, so that's elementary, secondary, K-2, pre-K, English language learners, alternative ed, gifted and talented. We saw a 2017 budget of $10,543,490 for FY18 proposed. We have $10,842,147.48. For the elementary school category, we saw a variance from 2017 to 2018. It's an increase of $94,000, roughly $93,700. For the secondary, we saw a decrease of 28,000. For the online learning, an increase of 15,700. The K through 2, we saw an increase of 77,000. For the pre-K, we saw an increase of 130,000. For the language learners, a decrease of $518. For the alternative ed, an increase of 7,900. And for the gifted and talented, an increase of 1,457. So for some of these categories, this included and this article was included in this to cover our second of 3 years of the negotiated salary increase for teachers at 3.5%, including other personnel adjustments. The addition of 2 study hall ed techs at Hamden Academy. One was already added during fiscal year 17 due to need, and that item alone was about $61,397. We eliminated 2 FTE teaching positions at Hamden. One was English language arts, half an FTE art and half world language. We've talked about those at past meetings. That was a decrease of 94,000 combined. With the integration of the new public pre-K program in Hamden Newburgh, instead of the Pancras Partnership, which is a $60,000 change. On the revenue side, though, for this year, at least for this 1 year only, we believe, and what is the status of the gift of the grant, if you will, to cover the change in that program?
Yeah, we fundraised 46,000 out of the 60.
So right now on our NCAP budget, if we look at how this is paid for, we've targeted 0 change at the end for fiscal year 18 due to the revenue side because of that one-time gift. That'll be something that we'll have to factor in next year unless we pursue a similar. And could you explain to folks here that may not have heard why that change occurred?
Sure. Rick, why don't you go ahead, because you were more involved with
Basically, the federal government has increased the requirements, therefore lower contribution rates for children. Also, I think, Don, they adjusted the income factors at the federal level, so again, less people qualified for Head Start program, and Head Start was basically the funding that drove it. It still is applicable and operational in Waldo County because your socioeconomic structure in Waldo County is less than Knox County. And Neil's right, Don and I had a conference call this morning with one of our lead facilitators, and we're currently sitting at 46,000.
That's great. So Article 1, the total combined change was $298,657 for that article for regular instruction. It's about 39% of the total change from the FY17 to FY18 budget. So Article 2, which is special education, we have an FY17 budget of $5.19 million. We have an FY18 proposed budget of $5.475 million. It's about a $282,000 increase. Again, about 37% of the total variance to this year's budget. This breaks down into, for special ed, which is again Article 2, for resource, we have an increase of $74,000. For the extended school year program, 0. For self-contained, $151,000. Do you want to explain or elaborate on those descriptions after I get through the list?
basically self-contained. It's a special ed classroom has its own class. That's basically what that is. Extended school year, we don't have that anymore. It used to be paid by local entitlement. It used to be like a summer school.
For hospital and homebound, an increase of $2,400. Social work, an increase of $3,426. Psychological, a reduction of $15,476. Make sure I get the right one. Yes. Speech and language, an increase of $30,350. For occupational therapy, a decrease of $41,000. 0 change in audiology. Physical therapy had an increase of $6,500. Adaptive physical ed had an increase of $520, and special ed admin an increase of $70,500. Again, for a total variance of $282,617. Again, this also included the second of 3 years of the negotiated salary increase for the teachers that fall within the special ed category, and for ed techs, there's actually 5%. It has additional personnel due to student needs. There's 0.2 full-time social worker, 5 ed techs, including 2.6 ed techs added during last year, during the fiscal year of 17. That line item alone represents about $184,000 of that $282,000, $617 increase. And then we have additional out-of-district tuition placement for special needs students. 1-year tuition cost is estimated at $40,000. Welcome.
Yeah, just to add to that, Rob, that would be Stillwater Academy, for example, or the Bagwell Regional Program for behaviorally impaired, about $40,000 per student, per year.
The other thing to add, Rob, on total Article 20, we had 6 placements after the local entitlement funding. And Lynn, are you out there right there?
Right here.
Could you explain local entitlement, what that means?
Local entitlement is federal money that we get. It's a grant that we get every year.
So there are some local entitlement monies that pay for this tuition.
That's correct.
So what that is that this is positions, including Medicaid building. It includes a $58,000 contingency for unforeseen students that are coming in that may be tuition for next year. However, we have 2 right now that we think will be moving in that we did not budget for, that probably will have to be spent.
It's a strong potential for that.
There's a
yes.
strong potential.
Yeah.
So I just want you to know that. So that already is being looked at as being spent.
Article 3 is CTE instruction. That line item had a $6,843 variance upward. It's about 0.9% of the total budget variance. And that's basically determined by the number of students attending the United Technology Center. That's a fixed number that will hold throughout the year.
That's correct.
Article 4, other instruction. So summer school, co-curricular, extracurricular. For summer school, we had an increase of $21. For elementary co-curricular, we had an increase of $2,701. But I'm rounding to, I'm not carrying out the cents here. Do folks in the audience have the 2-page summary? Were you able to pick that up on the way in? Okay. Apologize if I read down through these. Article 4, so secondary co-curricular, an increase of $12,993. Graduation, an increase of $800. Elementary extracurricular, $15,400 increase. And secondary extracurricular, an increase of $16,947. Total increase of $48,897. Represents about 6% of the total increase of FY18 budget.
Just to also highlight a point there, Rob, when they allude to stipends, those are also negotiated fees in the collective bargaining contract.
Okay, yes. And that also includes elimination of some programs due to non-participation, such as chess club, art, intramurals. We
That's
talked
correct.
about that at
That's correct.
the last meeting. So the increased stipend amount you mentioned due to negotiated contract is 3%, and then a trainer stipend at both middle schools of $8,000 falls within Article 4.
Correct.
Article 5, student and staff support services. A total increase of $21,429. This is for guidance, health, instructional related tech. Section 504, intervention, improvement instruction, instructional staff training, library, and assessment. For guidance, we have an increase of $36,290. For health, a decrease of $8,758. For instructional related technologies, a decrease of $31,000. In the other, in the charter school category, a change of 0. For 504, we have an increase of $24,912. For other student support, an increase of $7,256. For intervention, an increase of $7,683. For improvement of instruction, a decrease of $26,668. For instructional staff training, a decrease of $3,226. For library, an increase of $16,000, and for assessment, a decrease of $1,000. Again, total variance $21,429, representing 2.8% of the total FY 17-18 variance. Article 6, which is system admin, at an increase of $83,067, representing about 10.8%. This is for board of directors, staff relations, negotiations costs, central office, this includes superintendent, and the central office fiscal administration. For board of directors, there is an increase of $23,807. For staff relations and negotiations, there is an increase of $17,000. For central office for the superintendent, there's an increase of $25,626. And for the central office fiscal management, there's an increase of $16,633. At the last school board meeting, the full board meeting, we provided, one of our constituents had asked for a drill down of warrant article 6 and 7. I think there was a handout shared at that session, which will, a moment, that went down into a little more detail on that. That also included sort of a contingency within Article 1 through 5. So for Article 6, Item 1, this is the Board of Directors. There's basically an increase of legal fees to right fit that particular expense for the last 4-year average of $56,000, representing an increase of $17,000. $1,600 for board professional development, another $1,600 for dues and fees to attend conferences for the board, $1,400 for an audit increase for a total adjustment of $23,807. Number 2 on that list was mainly to cover legal fees to hire a labor consultant during the 2017-18 teacher negotiations, in which RSU 23 expended $42,000 during 2015-16, so we're now budgeting $25,000 in this year's upcoming budget. That's a $17,000 increase. Item 3 of that line, central office superintendent, is an increase for salary and benefits. The outgoing and incoming assistant superintendent, there was a vacation time overlap, which is approximately $10,000 from that line item. There's also a salary for 20, that's right. That's right, 2 different lines, 2 different categories. And there was a salary increase of $3,000 for that line item for the incoming assistant superintendent. That included, you're right, the incremental increase for the replacement of $10,000 was also, which was approved by the board during fiscal year 15-16. That's an annual $10,000 increase to that line item, which will basically cover the cost for the replacement superintendent when that retirement takes place. And I think one thing that was stressed, and was probably part of the original inquiry into this Article 6, is there was no increase in current superintendent or assistant superintendent salaries. Those salaries were negotiated at an agreed annual amount of $124,000 several years ago for the superintendent position. For item 4, central office for fiscal, that remaining amount is a 3% increase for the central office staff and a 5% increase for health insurance of slightly more than $16,000, $16,633. The next item is school administration. Which had an increase of, from FY 17 to 18, from 1.289 to 1.378 million of $89,044, representing about 11.7% of the total. Within that, we have salary and benefit adjustments for school administrators and office staff. We have 3% raise for administrators. So each administrator's salary and benefit pay increased by an average of $2,000. Also, it includes a stipend for Smith School of $4,200 to facilitate the pre-K program, in which basically this total principal, mainly principal salary benefit retirement increases is about $42,700 of that line item. The support staff contract is included in this line item, which was negotiated with EA 22, includes a secretary salary increase of 5% plus benefits, totaling about $27,555. A software office upgrade of $2,997, and phone upgrades for Reedsbrook, Wagner, and Smith schools of $14,713. Again, the total is $89,044. Wait till I get to Article 8, student transportation. From FY 17 to 18, it's from 1.273 million to 1.247, a decrease of $25,434, or a decrease of about 3.3% to budget. This included support transportation for tuition students, included a contract increase of 2.7, and also included the negotiated price for diesel fuel. Timo, can you break out a little more bit on the detail of Article 8? And I can come back to that if you want, but explain why the
transportation, the contract actually is $1,092,000. Out of that, though, $45,000 is a special ed bus paid by local entitlement instead. We also have summer school transportation is paid by local entitlement, which is $15,000. Then you add $10,000 where RSU 63 transport students contract for the year, and that line is $1,042,856. The fuel, the diesel fuel in that line, you have contracted $177,714. So that with the fuel and the contract, that's $1,220,000. And with the special ed district transportation is the $27,000, which is an individual that transports students over to the the Bangor Regional School, Community Health and Counseling. And am I missing another area where they transport?
Stillwater Academy?
Stillwater Academy, thank you.
Thank you.
And that position was held by Mr. Coulter, who's still budgeted in our budget.
Article 9, maintenance and operation of buildings. Set a change from 3.509 million to 3.487 million, $21,521 decrease, representing about a 2.82% decrease to the overall. This includes operation of buildings, care of buildings, maintenance, capital renew and reno, and A&E fees. This line also includes costs associated with utilities, reflecting budget method changes to realign the contingency to health insurance lines. Basically, we moved $150,000 in special ed lines, Article 2, which would cover unforeseen items such as special ed students, et cetera, moving into the district, approximately $58,000. So in fact, when we handed out this article, detailed 6 and 7, we also described that the Finance Committee, along with the Budget Committee, agreed to include contingency in those Article 1 through 9 warrant items for that approximate amount of $150,000. Again, that's associated with personal health benefits and throughout all the budget lines. And that's about a 5%?
Yes, 5 points, yep, 5%.
5 points.
About $30,000 a point.
And that's unlike last year, where we actually carried a $300,000 contingency, mainly across the utility line items, for utilities, insurance, and energy. What we found is that with the past 2 years, we did not use that contingency in those line items and moved it into the area that was more volatile, which is basically the two largest buckets, Article 1 and 2, and then remaining categories to cover basically benefits and personnel expense-related items. Item 10 is debt service, at a decrease from $4.027 million to $3.973 million, but a 7% decrease of overall budget. And then Article 11, which is called Other, this actually was for a food service transfer, and it was basically a variance of $33,000 proposed for this year. We did not have that. Can you, again, refresh that item? Ema?
Yes, during our negotiations with EA 22, the food service personnel received a 5% increase, and the yearly cost for that would increase the budget by about $18,000. And then the director benefit adjustment, what that means is Chris Grinier's retiring, and her health benefits was under Mr. Grinier, and she's leaving, so the health benefits now can be paid from, because he's the husband and wife teams, and the benefits would be paid from this food service transfer.
So that gives us a total FY 17 to 18 budget change of $30,081,235 from 17 to $30,844,264,000 in FY 18, representing about a $763,000 change. At the two budget workshop meetings, and I think as a recap at the last board meeting, actually this, we actually formulated, well, we also, it's also true, we also included the inclusion of Article 20, and I think the best reference that lays the foundation for Article 20, which has been the subject of much discussion at the municipal level, as well as at, I think, the board and the committee levels, as well as, again, really drives back to the legislative session. For those that were here, I think on the April 25th meeting, or May 2nd, in which case some of you met with some of our legislators, you're aware that we currently, until we hear otherwise, we still currently anticipate a $115,000 reduction in state funding. I've seen numbers that vary from an increase of $94 million from one side of the aisle to resolving the 3% and the tip credits, et cetera. So to say that we go there, which would be wonderful, is probably unlikely. To say that we won't do anything is also unlikely. The question is when. We've been talking about this now since we started talking about the budget. It's pretty difficult to establish a budget with reasonable assurances when 70% of the amount that is contributed to your community comes from the state, and they are the one party that has yet to commit to an exact amount. So as a byproduct of our finance meetings, our budget committee meetings, we in addition to increasing the amount of the unallocated fund balance from $439,000 transfer to cover FY 18 budget to a $540,000 transfer. And again, in our thinking, that $101,000 would roughly, it intended to offset some of the loss that's coming out of the state that we know today. However, it also brings us into compliance with the 2009 state law, which actually was sunsetted until this year. It was actually allowed to continue without being met since 2009, that requires that the unallocated fund balance be less than 3% of the prior year's budget, and transferring that $540,000 would do so. I tried to do a little bit of research today on where other school districts were in their unallocated fund balances, and I guess until I have a chance to validate those, I'm not going to share those in the public session. I think it's fair to say that most schools that I was able to dig up information on are in that realm. Some are as high as 6% and are going to have to pay down. The law says you have 3 years to pay it down to 3%. So in our case, we're actually able to hit that target in this next year. So Article 20, again, is a, I think, an instrument that the state created in the event that we were unable to receive confirmation from them about their local cost share. And this is included in the link 22 as well. So Article 22 is approved by the board. There were three options to consider. We actually considered two of those three options that were allowed to happen in the language. I'll read to you Article 20, which is really a vehicle that allows us, in the event that the state does allocate more funding, if and when they get around to telling us what that is, to manage that appropriately. So Article 20 states, in the event that the regional school unit receives more state education subsidy than the amount included in its budget, shall the school board be authorized to use all or part of the additional state subsidy to increase expenditures for school purposes in cost center categories as approved by the school board, which is basically the same as the articles that we just ran down through, and or decrease the local cost share expectation, which is defined in Title 20A, Section 15671-A, Sub 1, Sub B, for local property taxpayers for funding public education as approved by the school board. So I think what we've all experienced this year is a nearly equal desire by those wanting to increase expenditures for school purposes and to decrease the local cost share expectation. It'd be wonderful if we knew what amount we had in our budget to operate with. So Article 20 is a tool that will hopefully allow us, in the hopeful event that we have news that we're not losing $115,000, but perhaps maybe losing nothing or perhaps gaining something, to do that. And at the last board meeting, we made a motion, which we're actually going to work out at tomorrow night's school board meeting, to adopt a resolution, and I don't have our draft language here in front of me, I apologize, but basically it would, again, without knowing what it will be, it's non-binding, but it's basically to share and publicly declare the school board's intent on what to do in the event that that happens in both of those situations. So that's going to be worked out tomorrow night. And again, as a reminder, although we've put it off several times now, we have an annual school board meeting at the United Technology Center. After having canceled it at least once, if not twice, due to ongoing issues here, we are actually having that at UTC tomorrow night. So for those that can make it, it's a wonderful facility. Alan, you're our rep for UTC. What portion of our students are able to attend UTC?
I think we have around 85.
So 85 students, wonderful facility. If you've never been there, absolutely phenomenal partner to the RSU 22 education process.
Ross, speaking about partnerships, you all know we're getting ready to have our press release tomorrow with Honeywell and Bank of America. Emil, the multi-million-dollar lease purchase we've had with them for 7 years, what article is that contained in the budget?
The article is on the number,
That's operating cost, not a debt service article. That's basically my question. So just for clarification, if that were to come out tomorrow.
no, it's, the debt on the energy efficient project is
Yes.
going to be in, maintenance, capital maintenance on Article 9.
Article 9, okay.
That's where that's gonna be.
So when that press release is on our website tomorrow, that's the article that will align there.
Just to refresh your memory, the building committee worked diligently in this past March, voted to, and so did the board, to have an energy efficient project throughout the school district, which will be considerably an improvement for our infrastructure and air quality for our students. All the LED lighting throughout the district, interior and exterior lighting, will be replaced, except for Weatherby and the McGraw School, because we have an application in for a major capital project, and so that may come to fruition. We'll know the ranking on that project when we submit it to DOE will be probably announced next spring or next fall of 18. So we didn't do that, and then also we will be doing a dual conversion on all our boilers to give us the flexibility to either burn number 2 fuel or propane or even natural gas if it ever comes into Hamden. And then the other infrastructure items are weatherization throughout our whole school facilities, including Weatherby, and also destratification fans and things of that nature, so.
You might want to also, yet again, amplify the circuit breaker provisioning, where they don't, if they do not meet their targets, they actually receive a reimbursement. I think we received $26,000.
Yes, we did, but why don't I let Rob explain that, because you're in that field, it's a guarantee.
So this is a really continuation of the pilot program that we had with Honeywell, which also, same partnership with
Phase one,
Phase
yes.
One with Bank of America and
That's right.
and the other. So it's basically an LED conversion, basically switching to LED lighting, the lowered use of electricity, and that cost savings for the energy is basically guaranteed by Honeywell as part of their package. So basically there's zero change to the cost of the school over the period of time that that change is made, and then after that, it basically is an investment that keeps putting money back into the school system, if you will, with a much longer life with those LEDs than with traditional lighting. For anyone that may have been able to visit at Reed's Brook, the pilot installation of that, were there 3 lighting levels that folks experimented with?
We experimented 2 classrooms, Reeds Brook and Smith Elementary School.
And I noticed there were also 3 levels of energy with the students, depending on which level the lights were set at, so that's maybe a helpful tool or not for teachers. You can, I guess the remark, or would anyone like to comment on that, that's more familiar in the school with how that pilot installation was set?
Well, actually, I think it's fascinating that the cost savings pays the loan, and at the end of the loan period, then you'll have a savings in electricity.
Yes. Well, in fact, it's a guaranteed zero change. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, sorry.
If the savings are not met, Honeywell guarantees that they will credit the difference, which I believe on the pilot program, they overestimated the savings and did provide a credit back to that program. So we're basically continuing on with a broader version of that.
It's a great partnership.
Phase 2. So I guess I'd like to acknowledge some correspondence. Were there other comments from board members on budget or finance as part of the sort of the overview? I'd like to maybe address some of the correspondence we've received. So I don't have the yellow town of Hamden. You got it? So I guess back in May 16th, and I know Karen had a conversation with Angus Jennings, and I did as well, and it's at that, following that conversation that we, and when we were reviewing Article 20, we eliminated the third option, which I actually didn't read to you tonight, which was to eliminate the option to transfer funds into capital reserve in the event that the state subsidy, or the state funding of local education comes in higher. I guess I would paraphrase to say that the communication this year with the town has been more in-depth and more transparent than in years past. It was much more involved. However, at the end of that, Article 20 basically is a sticking point, and that and again, I'll paraphrase, and I know there's some counselors here, and we respectfully accept their letter that they are not able to formally or publicly support the school budget due to the inclusion of Article 20 that includes other than language which would reduce the local shares. They provided a very clear understanding of the tax situation in Hamden and their desire to keep that from changing. And again, we all respect that as elected officials here, we're all given a duty and a responsibility to do our jobs. And again, I have to commend them for doing theirs from the perspective and the lens that they bring. Again, that being said, the board just felt with the, and I'll say nearly equal, and again, I'm very pleased tonight to see a broad representation of interests as we develop the budget. It's not always like that every year. Usually it's like a wedding. There's one side or the other that maybe has more or less folks, and I'm not saying anyone on the other side is backing one ideal or another, but we respectfully were able to, although we were able to delete the capital expense transfer, we did not feel comfortable deleting the ability to transfer unanticipated local funds into school cost centers to support education. But we also, again, tomorrow night we'll be developing a resolution, I think as a way of continuing those conversations in that good faith, which is to provide at least some guidance that if X dollars come through, and again, we'll figure that out tomorrow night, if X dollars come through, if it's a percentage of X, it would go to reduce local taxes, if it's a percentage of Y, it would go to be considered to go into cost centers. So I can't really say any more than that because we haven't resolved the resolve until tomorrow. So Wally, did you want to add to that? We also received, the folks in Winterport, I believe all the board of directors received an email from Jake Metzler. See, Jake is here. Thank you, Jake. Really asking clarity on some of the policy DI. Let's see if I can follow this chain. And actually, with tonight being a budget meeting, not a policy meeting, I know that the DI policy is, Sean is the chair of the policy committee, who shared with me that the policy DI is on the agenda at the next policy committee meeting.
Yes, it is.
So the question reads, why is board policy DI not being followed? So the answer provided by me after talking to Heath and John and just reflecting back at my own experiences in the meetings where this policy would have been in effect was as such. It is not clear to me which portion of policy DI you're referring. Your email to the Winterport board rep states as follows. And this gives a little more clarity on the question I felt, so I included it in the email. It says, as you know, I've been concerned about the transparency of the budgeting process for the last 2 years. I've pushed for more transparency in the process and little has changed. I've attended finance meetings as frequently as possible to learn the best I can what the financial picture is in our district. What I've learned is the clearest picture of our finances, still in general terms, is through review of the completed audits, which are shared 6 months after the end of the fiscal year. One of the biggest observations I've made from that effort is that funds have been approved to directly support our students are going unspent and rolled over to the unassigned fund balance. Thankfully, there's a state law that requires that balance not grow larger than 3% of the budget. However, the budget committee and administration has shown a reluctance to spend down that money even though that balance has grown significantly over the last 3 years and is now about 3%, now above the 3% threshold. However, we don't have a true sense of where it's headed this year because there is no regular reporting of revenue expenses to the board and therefore the public, despite a very clear district policy DI. Are you comfortable with this lack of policy adherence? I'm not. So my response was, from your comment, it appears that you're referring to paragraph 3 regarding receipt of district financial information, which in my mind falls into the transparency category, and paragraph 2 regarding separation of funds. Regarding paragraph 3, my response was, at the December 14th Finance Committee meeting, which 50% of all board members were present, the issue of policy DI was taken up. It was agreed that development of a simple warrant article or article-based or cost center-based expenditure, which the expenditure-based look at the budget was developed last year as a different way of analyzing the budget. So this is really something that's been forming over the past 2 years as a change to how it's been done for many years. It was agreed that a simple summary would be developed for review by the full board to accompany the Finance Committee minutes that are already circulated during full board meetings. That has evolved into a 2-page summary. Again, you actually have it, I believe, in your hands tonight, with a breakout of major warrant items or articles, and was used most recently to assist in actually communicating the budget preparations at several board meetings, including Finance and Budget Committee meetings. Regarding paragraph 2, separation of funds. Every warrant that the Finance Committee signs contains an attachment entitled Budget by Warrant Article Totals by Cost Center that depicts the yearly financial status by cost centers. Also, in looking back at the records, it shows that the Finance Committee has reviewed anticipated revenues and expenditures on an ongoing basis throughout the school year during Finance Committee meetings, including September 29th, October 25th, December 1st, December 14th, February 28th, and April 17th. And again, this is a response to Jake. I indicated that meeting minutes indicated that you were present at 5 of the 6 meetings listed, but not the December 14th meeting referenced above. That's the one where we talked about policy DI, so hopefully that was, you missed one meeting where it was probably covered the most, at least as far as the format. I know that format has evolved into not just a single line reporting by article, but it includes major breakouts. Again, if you have it in your hand, there's the 4 or 5, or in some cases more breakouts by article, the major buckets, if you will, or the major articles. So my response here is that the simple 2-page presentation of the warrant article of cost centers combined with the Finance Committee meeting minutes at board meetings would appear to meet the reference sections of policy DI. I also said that there's always room for improvement in the same email. And again, I think what we're seeing is an evolution of how that reporting occurs. And I know we'll be able to talk about that at where it really needs to be talked about, which is at the policy committee next meeting. With respect to the 2 remaining paragraphs of Article DI 1 and 4 regarding the treasurer role of the superintendent and informing the administrative team respectively, you are correct that we receive assurances through an annual audit that the funds of the district have been accounted for properly and in accordance with Department of Ed and good accounting practice. On the RSU 22 website, there should be a recent copy of the audit.
Yes.
Yes, there is.
In an effort to provide further financial transparency as a board, and again, I'm speaking from my own experience, but I know, again, many board members attend not only their own committee meetings, but also their other committee meetings as guests, and also here as a board in the recap at the annual monthly meetings. We have received updates from the superintendent about various items within cost centers, and we have held interactions with the administrators and directors, many of whom are present usually tonight as with other meetings to answer questions we might have at most board meetings. With a plethora of items that the full board reviews at each monthly meeting, with the efforts of fellow board members representing their respective committees in between, I personally feel that I'm quite informed of the many aspects of the school operations, including finance, reference and policy DI. That being said, I'm of the opinion there is always room for improvement when communicating complex issues in a finite amount of time, and welcome comments and questions that enable us to do so. I personally feel that RSU 22 has done a much better job in the past 2 years communicating with folks on issues of finance, particularly during the budget preparation cycle, some of which has been complicated or frustrated with the delays in state commitment to education funding. Question 2 was, will the FY17 budgeted transfer of $439,000 be needed to cover expenses? Bear in mind, that was the amount, the 439 was the amount budgeted last year.
For this year, yes.
For this year. The answer to that is it says, the question includes during FY14, 15, and 16, the budgeted transfer has not been needed. If this transfer will be needed to cover a gap between revenue and expenses, how much of it will be used? So the answer to that was the $439,000 was an obligated amount that was transferred from the unassigned fund balance to the assigned 2016-17 budget revenue line, which did lower local taxpayer commitment by $439,038 as part of that year's district-wide approval of that budget. As far as FY14 through 16 was concerned, the following transfers of unassigned fund balance occurred during those prior fiscal years, also to lower the local tax commitment for those budget years. In 14, there's a transfer of $230,000. In 15, there's a transfer of $314,000. And 16, there's a transfer of $314,000 again. Regarding what will be needed or used, I think that maybe the revenue or expense gap is addressed in the answer your question 3 below. Your question states, what is the status of expenses by cost center now versus what was budgeted? And what are the projections for the end of the fiscal year 17 with only 1 month to go? Again, that's connected to your question 2. The answer, as estimated and mentioned during the May 2nd Budget and Finance Committee meeting, the estimated amount is a net increase of $180,000 for projected actual versus budgeted revenues. So the revenue side, we see projected to have an increase over $180,000 over budgeted. He will break down the tuition-based and other.
Mainly tuition. Mainly tuition.
There's also a net decrease, somewhere between 400,000 or to 650,000 per year-to-date projected actual versus budgeted expenditures, which is an amount that may fully cover this year's $540,000 that is proposed to be transferred from the 2017-18 assigned budget revenue line to lower local taxpayer commitment, while remaining below the 3% limit. We will not know the exact expenditure amount until the end of August due to several 2016-17 invoices not being received until the summer, which combined with the state's inability to commit to an increase in educational spending has resulted in a more difficult time setting a budget. With the board adopting Article 20 with 2 options, should the state increase its commitment above the current, I said $150,000 reduction, that's a typo, that should have read $115,000, apologize. Question 4, finally, you state, should Article 20 pass and funds become available, what would the process be to prioritize allocations of those funds? Is the board generating a list of what should be funded? So that gets back to the Article 20 resolution. The answer is at the May 17th board meeting, the board agreed to draft a resolution that would address 2 options available to the board within Article 20 as approved. The resolution language is on the agenda tomorrow night at the June 7th board meeting. I wasn't prepared to read your follow-up response to that. I anticipated you may want to do so yourself tonight, so I won't steal your thunder, Jake. But it basically, again, the ongoing dialogue is helpful. I have to say Jake's been at probably as many Finance Committee meetings as anyone I've seen as a member of the public, so thanks for taking your time as well. So I guess at this point, are there other comments from members of the Budget Committee or Finance? I think we can open it up to questions. And we have the list. First up, and please come up to the podium and clearly state your name and the Molly Swallow. Yes, you'll be able to be picked up by the mic. You don't have to yell as loud as I do.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. There are a few faces here that I recognize and quite a few also that I don't. I'm a very forgetful person. And I know it's probably quite the same for a few of you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Molly Swallow, and I'm a sophomore here at HA. And thank you for pronouncing my name right. Most people don't get it right the first time. I've heard Swalick so many times. Now, I could probably be here until this time next week telling you about how many things at this school I adore. And I could start with your academic program. I'm looking to taking advanced placement English next year, and I know I wouldn't be up here talking to you all today if I haven't already taken several great classes in oratory and interpersonal communication. Next year I'll also be taking advanced placement math courses. I'll be doubling up on the sciences and coming in an hour early to take an early bird social studies course, just so that during the actual school day I have one more period to pursue another academic subject. And your language courses, at least Latin, are nothing short of stunning. I really look forward to being a JCLer for the next 2 years and an SCLer once my high school days are over. But nothing in Hampton was ever the end-all be-all for me like art was. And yes, I'm here to talk about that. After all, this is an institution of learning, and nothing here at this school has taught me quite so much as art has. Now, those English courses, they've all taught me how to speak, but I've never really known what to say. Indeed, for quite a while, I didn't think I had anything to say. But finally, I found something through which to express myself. Because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then what's a sculpture worth? What are 10 sculptures, or 100 sculptures, or a whole school worth of sculptures worth? Is it a grade point? Is it a budget cut? To me, they are worth everything, and I know I'm not the only student at AHA who feels that way. Every day when I walk into class, I see dozens of other students just as dedicated to this subject as I am. They say that if you build it, they will come, but here at this school, I found that if only you open the door to the art room, they'll come and build it themselves. They, indeed we, will build art and beauty and community and solidarity, and we will grow and prosper if only given the chance. But I feel that this chance has been threatened by the budget cuts proposed by this board. Spaces and foundational courses, which are already kind of slim, will be cut even slimmer, and several high-level art courses like advanced sculpture, advanced art, and ceramics will just be gone. There won't be reduced numbers or one less section. They just won't be there. Something that I know will be absolutely devastating for some of my friends who've been looking forward for 2 years to taking those classes. And due to these budget cuts, I myself may be hurt. Next year I was looking forward to taking Advanced Placement Studio Art, a course which usually lasts 2 years. And if the budget cuts go through, all higher level courses will be condensed into a single class period, meaning that there may only be about 18, 19 spots for 2 classes, drawing and painting, or rather 3 classes, drawing and painting, advanced art, and advanced placement art. And that one period is hard to schedule around, and it'll fill up fast. So I can't delay this course by a year. I hope, as you vote on this matter, that you remember that this is an institution of personal growth and learning and betterment that is meant to help its students. It's not just a string of numbers on a sheet of paper. And I hope you remember that if you cut this budget, which doesn't seem like it needs to be cut, then you stunt growth which may not need to be stunted. And I hope you all remember the beauty of the art program here at HA, because I know that I will for days and months and years and a lifetime. And I want to remember it in its full glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. This is the kind of testimony I think that we've been hearing through the whole budget preparation process that's really made Article 20 at the top of our priority, and why we had to keep those 2 bits of language intact. Jake Metzler, I hope I didn't steal your thunder from reading your letter, but you,
No, you definitely didn't steal my thunder.
thank you.
I apologize that you all had to listen to him read it, because it's hard enough when you're just looking at the numbers on the page, let alone when they're being read back to you. So the only thing I'll say, since he highlighted 2 of my biggest concerns, are basically the response that I sent Rob today. Is, again, my concern with policy DI is that it says that at each board meeting there will be a review, not a review, but this information will be shared with the board. And looking back through the board minutes, basically every other one through last November has a statement about reviewing the committee discussions, but they don't. There's nothing in there that indicates that the board was presented information about the status of the finances up to that point. And then going back further, as far as you can go with minutes online, there's a lot of nones under the finance committee report. So my point in the whole discussion is that if you have progressive information about where things are headed during the year, when we get to this point of the year, we have a much better picture of what's going to help form the budget that we're talking about right now. That's what I'm hopeful for, that the process can be improved so that we all have, we're able to ask our board members how they feel about the status of things, and that they can have that information at hand, or we can be here to listen to it being discussed. I don't feel like that's happening now. And then on the unassigned fund balance, again, there was a lot of talking of the numbers in the email. Basically, my issue is we budget for a transfer from that fund balance to support revenues and reduce taxes. But over the last 4 years, even with that transfer, we've had fewer expenses and more revenue. Therefore, it really, that fund balance continues to grow. And I'm going to have to push back on the fact that we're at 900,000 now.
We will be, we're not there now. We're higher than that right now. After the transfer, it will go down, and then after unallocated funds flow back in, it will go back up.
My point will be that everyone should review that a little more closely and make your own decisions about if you think there's room there to absorb some of these cuts, fund them in a way that doesn't makes them that you don't have to make the cuts, and that if there's money there that could be reduce the tax burden on the towns. I think there's money there for that. I think a hard look at those numbers would allow for people to make good decisions about that, but it's really hard to get that number. Again, mostly that number is most obvious in that annual audit summary, which comes December after we've already voted. Again, it's 18 months behind the numbers that we're working on. So that makes it tough. But I appreciate the timely response to my questions. I know it's busy and we all are trying to balance a lot here. So again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Please, everybody, since we're at the point now where it's up to us to decide how we're going to vote in 2 days, consider spending more of that unassigned fund balance towards some of these cost centers so that we can keep positions and reduce that impact on taxes. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. John Ehrman, did I say that correctly?
Close enough.
Close enough? I can't read your last name. You must be a doctor, lawyer.
No. No, I'm John Armand, thank you. I moved here 4 years ago. I have kids in 5th grade and 3rd grade. And I just had a question about something I learned tonight. I was surprised in looking at page 6 of the little handout to see a projection of declining enrollment by 7 or 8% over the next 9 years. I've, like I said, been around for 3 or 4 years. I thought the enrollment was gently increasing. Is this a reversal? Are we peaking right now? Has this been expected? And I just want to know whether this is what you've been foreseeing for the last bunch of years and why we expect enrollment to decline over the next 8 or 9 years. Thank you.
Well, actually, I've had that same question for the past couple of years, and since I'm on the board, they actually gave me the consultant's report with reference to population increases in our district, which I found to be somewhat unconvincing because of the number of subdivisions that have occurred in the towns over the last 3 or 4 years. It's true that they've been expecting a population decrease, and in fact we have had a population decrease, although interestingly the student body at Hamden Academy has not shrunken as much as was expected 5 years ago, at least in part because of tuition students. But I actually think that the contraction of population in our district is not going to be as great as that report indicates, or as our consultant has been saying for the last several years.
John, the other thing just to highlight, Frankfort came into our district in 2013. Our population on April 1, 2013 was 2,167. The next April went to 2,300. That's when Frankfort came in. Then we went to 2015, 2,273, and just this past October we were at 2,400. So we had an increase of 10.75% of students over the last 4 years, basically because of the insertion of Frankfurt coming into our community RSU at that time.
Any other comments from board members? Follow-up?
Well, I will point out that, in fact, most other school districts in this state are having terrible financial problems because of the decrease in population, both the total population in the towns and the population of students. Our district, I think due to a combination of both luck and good management, does not have the problems of most other school districts in the state.
I would like to have Emil just amplify, listening to Jake's comment, because with the input of the towns this past year, we have modified downward considerably our contingency fund. So Emil, can you speak to what the contingency was last year versus what it is this year, because I think that plays into the designated fund balance.
Well, after listening to comments from our constituents, we used to have in our utility lines approximately $300,000 of contingency funds. What happened, we eliminated that, we looked at our fuel, we looked at trends and things of that nature, eliminated that, and put an additional 5% on Blue Cross Blue Shield benefits. So we had 5% increase, well, 5.5% increase, and we budgeted 10. That's about $150,000. And then we put, because of the ebbs and flows of individuals coming in, our employees, you could have someone leaving with a single coverage and coming in with full family coverage, which is a difference right there, is almost $20,000. So that was a logical place to put it, with the finance committee decided to do that, with the budget committee. The other place is when we talked to Lynn Wells, our director of special ed, and here's a good example. We're anticipating 2 more students coming in. They'll need special ed tuition, and they will be taking up we put about $58,000 of additional tuition, and who knows how much they will use. So it's gone from $300,000 to about $200,000.
So the point being, with the lessening of contingency, we may have greater reliance upon the fund balance. That's the point.
Yeah, and I think Jake has a good point. I think there was a sunset provision that's come to fruition where it was waived, where school systems, the difference, Maine Municipal Association recommends a 10% fund balance. We are committed to 3%. Before, as Rob alluded to, that was sunset, and we didn't have to adhere to that, but starting next year, the 3% is something that they will allow, and that you have 3 years to spend your 3%.
John noted in one of his responses a couple of moments ago from the historical perspective. Let me remind the board, in the late 90s, a long time ago, this district had no fund balance, 0. And I think I saw Martha Harris is out there. The board at that time set a goal to increase that fund balance incrementally, and we attained that goal. So over the last 20 years, we've paid very good attention to that, and we're in a very favorable position now versus what we were some 20 years ago.
Jake, I did take your cue, and I didn't read your full email, but you mentioned former board member Sharp's blog. I have to say, I did watch one. I actually liked your music videos better from years past, I'll have to say. But one of the questions that I really took away that I thought might be suitable for night, there was a question about the $1 million for libraries over the past 3 years, asking about how comfortable folks were with those numbers for library services, indicating that, given there was an understanding by the former board member that we were short on money for books. Can we explain what the $1 million was spent for over the last 3 years? And it also related to the Tibbetts money of $300,000. How many times have we spent that $300,000? If we spent that through the bequest, why do we spend $300,000 per year? Can someone, Emil, can you break out the detail on the library?
Rob. Last year on the warrant, it says, right under the warrant, supported by Tibbetts bequest, $300,000 supported by Tibbetts bequest. So can you just explain how much of the Tibbetts bequest?
Yeah, so $10,000 was.
What did we spend last year, John?
Well, actually, we have budgeted for the
We're
past.
missing the Oxford comma perhaps, $300,000, comma, supported by the Tibbetts. Maybe that would have
So it's
been,
in the warrant.
there you go, right?
Official document that was voted on last year, supported by Tibbetts.
We have budgeted, from the Tibbetts bequest, $15,000 a year, but we actually have only spent approximately $10,000 to $12,000 a year, simply because there's no reason to spend the money if you don't have something really good to spend it on. And so we are very carefully using that Tibbetts bequest money. In fact, we've also invested it, I think, rather nicely. And so, rather than lasting what I had hoped was going to be 12 to 15 years, it may well last 25 to 35 years and provide excellent materials for the Hamden Academy Library.
You know, could you confirm that the majority of that money that Rob is asking is basically aligned with salary and benefits for librarians and educational technicians? Can you speak to that?
Yes, when you look at that account, 318,000, a significant amount is the salary and benefits for your librarians, your benefits, your retirement. Is in there. There's an increase in $10,000 for books in the Hamden Academy Library this next year. And the Tibbetts Foundation was a one-year submission to offset increases in the budget because we had such a tight budget last year. That's being reinstated, and that's why there's a $10,000 increase in the textbook line. So, I mean, the Tibbetts Foundation are purchasing materials and books and things of that nature associated with Hamden Academy that is not aligned with the budget. It's a separate item.
Mrs. Mangan, do you want to add to that? please?
Sure, and I think it's important to understand that it's not to supplant any budgetary expenditures from the district or the HA budget. It's only to supplement. So those very words came out of the bequest itself. Those words come up in most, if not all, and Mr. Cogshaw, chime in if I'm wrong, but in most, if not all, of the meetings. So it's a constant reminder that we're very well aware of as a Tibbetts committee.
Yes, it's to provide not just books, but an interesting variety of materials. Our librarian has had a number of really great ideas. For instance, we're getting some specialized computer programming for some of the kids who've been here to the library. And also materials to do a number of interesting things at what's called a maker's space. At the moment, she is devoting 2 afternoons a week, and that may increase next year. It depends on the degree of interest. She's devoting 2 afternoons a week after school to activities in the library. And by the way, the activities are such that the library discipline is somewhat relaxed. In that, for instance, talking is allowed and refreshments are served. And there's been quite an enthusiastic response by the students who come to these things.
And most often, or most recently, they've built a hard drive that they took for a test run last Thursday with one of our IT gentlemen who gave them a thumbs up, and it was nothing but but it was only a group of students who built this. There was no adult involvement. So for products like that to come out of Tibbetts seed money, I would hope that that's exactly the kinds of things that they had envisioned with that.
Thank you.
Corpus of that is managed by the Maine Community Foundation.
Right. The funds from the Tibbetts bequest are managed by the Maine Community Foundation, which is what's going to stretch it over a substantially longer number of years.
So again, we thank folks for being able to attend. Thank you for all your input, whether it's by email, conversation, attending the meetings. Again, for those that are not able to make it to tomorrow night's board meeting at UTC, we didn't want to offend our guests multiple times with cancellations. Again, wonderful facility. If you do show up, you will get to see us craft the resolution that will decide how we move forward with any supplemental funds from the state. So that's, I won't say it'll be an exciting time, but certainly it'll be an important time, so.
And then Thursday, 7 o'clock?
Thursday, probably the most important one. Show up for the district budget meeting. It's highly important that we get support, again, regardless of your perspective, on June 8th at the district-wide meeting. The approval at that meeting of the budget. We'll move forward to June 13th at each of the communities for local voter approval. So again, the crafting of that, as has been shared with Link 22, is approved by the board. Will be first passed by district-wide folks on June 8th, and then hopefully move on to June 13th. I'll entertain one more question from the audience.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to clarify things. I'm not sure if I was following very well. So, with respect to Article 1, I hear that there was a 10% increase in the number of students who are attending the school. What's the increase of teachers percentage-wise within Article 1 over that same period of time?
The increase of teaching positions?
Yeah, so within that particular, article, how many teachers have, so we have an increase of 10% of students, what's the increase, the corresponding increase of teachers?
I think there was an increase in 10% of students over four or five years.
Over 4 years.
Not over 1 year.
Yeah, over 4 years, sir, yes.
Yeah, and so what's the increase in teachers?
Well, Mrs. Magnan, over the last 4 years at Hannon Academy, have we added teaching positions? Please remind me.
Yes, we have. I know, let me think here for a moment. I can only speak
Yeah.
to 2 of those,
Okay.
but many of the increases that we've seen over my tenure here have been students coming to us that have additional needs. So I know for certain we've included 1 additional position in our special ed department. Boy, I'm punting on this one, gentlemen.
Mr. Raymond, is there any that you can think of, Mr. Raymond, over the last 4 years?
Yeah, the cyber center was an ed tech position.
That's right. I can get you, sir, the
What
exact
about-
thing.
Well, see, the other thing that's probably more important than that is class size. Obviously, if you don't,
Right.
if you're looking at relatively small attendance, you could entertain a 25% increase in the class and not justify an additional FTE, but that dials into that conversation, and maybe those numbers could be shared at the next board meeting?
But that 10% is not just at the high school level.
No.
I mean, my question would be, was there any positions added 4 years ago in Winterport, where most of those Frankfurt students would have ended up?
Again, I can get the exact figures, but Mrs. Moore, over the last 4 years,
Yep, I've had 3 teachers added in
okay,
Frankfurt.
3 teachers at Winterport Smith. I know we added a teacher at Weatherby.
We added a halftime special ed teacher within the last 4 years.
Okay. What about, okay,
In class size, I know our kids go to Winterport, the class size changed a bit when
yes, yes,
Frankfurt joined as well, and
yeah.
And
Mrs. Briggs at McGraw?
It ebbs and flows. We're currently at 6th kindergarten, which is what we've historically been, but at 2nd grade, it was 4 2 years ago, and we added a position to
We had a
create a 5.
position there,
Yep.
so Smith.
Whose position? My position.
At Wagner, we added, when 5th grade came to Wagner. Well, I mean, obviously, we brought those teachers with us, but
Right.
we added 1 full-time teacher at grade 6, 8, and anticipating the Frankfurt students coming in.
And
Reedsburg, Mrs. Nichols?
last fall, the board voted to add positions at McGraw and Weatherby due to unexpected increased
Yes.
enrollment. That
So
was
again-
after the
So
school
again,
year
just for
started.
clarity, as Wally mentioned, the 10.75 is over 4 years, K through 12.
Well, in special ed,
Position
we added,
two.
this year, we added 9 ed techs, 0.5 teacher, special ed, 0.4 OT, 0.4 psych, and a 0.2 social worker. Just this past year.
I'm thinking, I'm imagining anyway, that the 10% isn't all special ed need kids.
That's
And
correct.
so I'm thinking in terms of proportionality, is that if we have this influx, are we addressing it through the number of teachers that are?
Yes, we are, yeah. And in addition, we also received now at the high school, compared to 5 years ago, approximately 32 tuition students. When we were at the old Hannon Academy 5 years ago, the district did not accept any tuition students at the secondary level because of capacity issues.
In 15-16, we introduced the middle school foreign language.
Thank you. Yep.
And I think it's also important, over the last 2 years, we've developed a threshold, if you will, of what numbers in classes are expected to be for a minimum enrollment. There were classes here at my arrival that had 3 and 4 students only in those classes. And so when we've got classes that small, and then we've got classes of 21, 22, 23, it's difficult to substantiate a request for staffing at that level without having some kind of cap. So 10 is our number that we try to achieve in classes so that we can ensure that staffing is appropriate for reasons just like what you're asking. It's tough to hear in our same district that we've got lower grade levels with 21, 22 kids. I remember that from McGraw's budget meetings last year, and then high school courses with only 4 students. That's hard to justify as a district administrative team, so that's really where that threshold came from, so that we could ensure that not only the high school, but all of our schools were having appropriate staffing. You know, and then we can request things moving forward as those numbers climb above 10, and we know that they will. We've watched it over the last 2 years that we can justifiably ask the board and taxpayers for more funding to support additional staff here.
Rick, do you think tomorrow you could get specific numbers on teaching positions that we've added over the last 4 years, not including the ed techs or special ed? Yes, I think, yeah.
I'll have that tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Rick.
Yes, one more?
No, that was.
Nope, behind you.
Oh, there you go.
I just think it's important to point out that we didn't add foreign language at the middle schools, we reinstated foreign language at the middle schools, so.
Yes,
That's good clarification.
thank you, yeah, you're right.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow and Thursday. It's been a busy week.
One more thing.
One more,
Rick, in looking at those numbers, could we maybe focus on core teaching positions, not specials or things, just the positions that would be impacted by increased enrollment? Thank you, Rick.
motion to